Medic is in quite the unique position when it comes to staying alive in TF2. As a medic, you are playing against classes that have much better weapons than you and oftentimes better movement options to boot. Your job is just don't let them kill you. As you may have guessed or experienced firsthand, that's easier said than done. There are a massive number of skills to learn, practice, apply, and interweave when it comes to surviving while still getting the heals and Ubercharges off that medic is known for, but I'll do my best to break them down in this video. Now, right off the bat, this topic is hard to put into words. Everyone knows that as we continue playing, we naturally start to build muscle memory that improves our aim. Similarly, we are always unconsciously being conditioned into making better decisions based on what works and what hasn't worked. It's not like every choice we make is well thought out and intentional, just like we don't actively think about button presses or mouse movements. We just do them. But at the same time, survival should be at the top of your list of skills to work on as an aspiring medic player. You should be thinking about staying alive, as it's a more critical skill for medic than any other class. As a medic, your life is worth more than any other class on the team. Trading 1-for-1 on a damage class isn't the best, but it's a pretty even outcome all things considered, and won't set your team back too far. Conversely, if one or even two enemies trade their lives to kill you as the medic, your team is likely now in a losing position. Other classes miss out on 5 to 20 seconds of damage and maybe a few kills while they're dead, and the medic likewise misses out on healing. But medic also loses however much Uber he had when he died and the Uber that he now can't build while respawning. On average, I'd wager every 2 to 3 deaths on medic is equivalent to dropping a full Ubercharge, even if you were only at a few percent when you croaked. So to set the stage, let's start general and zoom in from there. There are two fundamental aspects of doing anything in a video game: deciding on an action, then properly executing that decision. In most first-person shooters, decision-making and mechanics go hand in hand and are more or less equally important in being a great player. Excellent decision-making can somewhat make up for poor execution, and vice versa, a mastery of mechanics and fantastic aim can save you when you make a terrible choice. But more or less, you have to be good at both if you want to succeed, and really good at both if you want to be the best you can be. While both of these aspects of play are essential, they are weighted differently for the 9 classes in TF2. Some classes want a bit more raw muscle memory, while other classes favor strategy and planning.
It's nothing to solve, dude. You hit the pill.
Well, I figured that out.
You give up
I finally figured it out, dude. It took me 45 hours to figure it out.
Got over the equation.
If I just hit the pill, it works.
Wow.
If I just hit the pill, it works!
What'd you do to that man?
No, dude! Decision-making and forethought are more important to medic than any other class and play a significant role in your overall effectiveness. This is a result of medic being so much weaker offensively than the other mercs, and let's be honest, mechanically simpler. Medic players can rarely rely on their mechanics alone to keep them alive or make plays, unlike some other classes. This is because those other classes have the luxury of being able to clutch out fights or use their movement options to escape if they're caught out. This is not the case on medic. Generally speaking, if you make the wrong choice and end up someplace you shouldn't, you won't get a chance to correct it with good mechanics. You're just gonna die. This is only further compounded by the fact that in any given game of TF2, you'll undoubtedly have several players on the opposing team foaming at the mouth at the prospect of achieving the fabled medic pick. So since you aren't going to win fights against the 8 other classes, that's just not your job. As a medic, you need to proactively avoid being caught out. The usual way to avoid these deer in the headlight situations is to simply position better. Better positioning keeps you alive, keeps you healing, and keeps you building that Uber. But what constitutes a better position? And how do you determine that position A is better than position B in the heat of battle? To make sense of such a broad term as positioning, we need to break it down a bit further. I like to think positioning on medic is like walking a tightrope, a constant balancing act between risk and reward. You have tens of things that you could be doing at any given moment: supplying overheal, arrow tanking your heavy, Ubering your demo man. Your goal is to sift through these seemingly endless options and execute the decision that you believe will give your team the largest advantage possible, while also minimizing the potential personal risk to you. But you need to be in the right position to execute that decision in the first place. And of course, the situation is constantly changing, so you will be in a perpetual state of evaluation, reevaluation, and execution. And in most circumstances, some amount of risk is always necessary to have the highest output. I can tell you right now what the safest position on every map is: the spawn room. If you don't leave the spawn room, you probably won't die. The issue is that staying in the spawn room significantly hinders your impact on the game. As you leave spawn and move closer to the front lines, your safety diminishes, but your potential output increases. Yet you don't want to go too deep, because the place where your potential output is maximized is very likely also a place of immense danger where you will die almost immediately. The goal is to walk that fine line, optimizing both your position's safety and output with the end goal of maximizing your impact on the game overall. So how do you optimize your current position's safety? I guess I can start off by saying stay near teammates, health packs, out of sniper sight lines. That stuff's all well and good. Those are the obvious positioning tips that have been echoed time and time again, along with never being caught out alone as medic. Being alone greatly increases your risk while also not allowing you to build Ubercharge, one of your most important jobs. But we all know that factors in TF2 can change on a dime, leaving you caught out from what you assumed was a safe and effective position, which is why you'll need game sense to survive. Game sense is a term to describe situational awareness applied to a video game. It's the perception of the current game state around you, the comprehension of its meaning, and the projection of its future status. Basically understanding the game well enough that you can make an educated guess about the outcome of any given scenario. Great game sense allows you to avoid situations where you have the disadvantage while finding and exploiting situations where you do have the advantage. Obviously, never take a fight from a losing position, but also try not to even take fair fights. You always want to have the advantage when making a play. I think that good game sense is the most important and difficult skill to learn as a medic, yet it will be your greatest tool in the never-ending struggle of survival, letting you escape situations before they even happen. Game sense will inform every single decision you make, and medic as a class is always making critical decisions, as we discussed earlier. First and foremost, game sense is developed by actually playing the game, experiencing unique situations, and making a decision based on said situation. It will gradually improve as you continue to do this and learn which decisions were correct or incorrect. Picking any old option is easy when playing medic, but picking the correct one that will maximize your current impact on the game consistently is extremely hard. Experience is an absolute necessity in developing game sense. But that doesn't mean you can't develop it faster if you know what to look out for. The first step is easiest, building up your foundation of tactical knowledge. That's understanding what each class and their weapons are capable of, knowing their ammo and damage, fire rate, class movement speeds, etc. Pretty much all of the fundamental game mechanics. Along with this, there's also map knowledge. To take advantage of the current map, you need to know it like the back of your hand. Where are the health packs, chokes, common sniper sight lines, flank routes that spies or scouts may take? And always remember that using high ground is very advantageous, since soldiers and demos will have to be more precise and can't rely as much on splash damage to chip you down. The second step to developing game sense is a bit harder, having high awareness. You simply cannot determine the best option unless you have as close to a holistic view of the current situation as possible. As a medic, you must be a sponge of game state information. If the enemy medic just died, you need to know that you now have Uber advantage. If their sniper just respawned, you need to know what it means for your current positioning and sight lines. If your soldier doesn't know how to rocket jump, you need to know that he's a waddler. If the enemy team has a friendly heavy, you need to exploit that fact for free Uber and sandwiches. This awareness can be divided into 3 categories: visual, audible, and mental. Visual awareness is just what's on your screen, but with a field of view limit of 90, you can't always see everything. This is where the other aspects of awareness and good crosshair placement come into play. When not attaching beam to a new player or aiming a crossbow shot, where you place your crosshair can drastically improve the amount of visual information you can take in. Use your peripheral vision to its fullest and try to have as many doorways or flank routes on your screen at once. If you're on a map with a lot of verticality to it, you should also angle your crosshair slightly upwards so you can see bombing players easier. And for the love of God, glance at your match HUD at least every 5 to 10 seconds in casual to quickly see who's alive or dead. Now, you can't always see enemies, but sometimes you can still hear them. The most obvious example of audible awareness is listening for spy decloaks. But explosives, sentry beeping, crit sounds, and even hearing the enemy medic shout out that he's fully charged can give you information critical to your survival. Finally, mental awareness involves keeping track of who's alive or dead, what the enemy medic's Uber percent is, what sightline the enemy snipers are likely locking down, or even when a health pack is respawning. Basically tracking something you can't currently see or hear based on what you've previously seen or heard. Good mental awareness can give you an edge by preemptively avoiding situations instead of trying to reactively avoid them once you see them happening. Small side note, but visual, audible, and mental awareness are not just crucial for staying alive, but also for you to know what teammates are taking damage, have crit heals available, and so on, letting you distribute heals to the players that most need them. Alright, on to the last step of developing strong game sense, which is definitely the hardest. Once you have that base of tactical information and know what the current game state is, you need to incorporate and apply that data into your decision-making process. After all, that information is only as good as what you do with it. Sure, knowing the enemy medic just died is nice, but if you don't alter your playstyle at all to take advantage of that info, then does it really matter that you know? Based on my anecdotal experience, a lot of pubbers seem to have a very fixed playstyle, where they play the same way every game and just hope it works out. Sure, for some games it will, but for others, it won't. Great medics and great players in general are dynamic in their playstyle, changing their priorities on the fly based on what's happening right now to exploit the situation for every possible advantage they can think of. They aren't content just doing what they've done before, but are constantly thinking of and trying out new options. Doing so nets you even deeper information about the game that you can turn around and apply in the future. If your decision works out and you make a fat play, great. Now when you're in a similar situation in the future, you have a better idea of what to do. If your decision fails miserably due to some unforeseen factor, great. Now when you're in a similar situation in the future, you have a better idea of what to do. Stop seeing mistakes as failures and start seeing them as valuable information that will help you improve. So here are my recommendations to work on building up strong game sense. First, build your understanding of baseline tactical information about weapons and classes. Work on heightening your visual, audible, and mental awareness as much as possible so you are surprised as little as possible. Finally, use this knowledge and awareness about the current game state to inform your decision-making process and go for various plays. Don't be afraid to make mistakes going for something new or limit tests by seeing just how far you can push yourself. In the end, the ultimate goal shouldn't be to just make a play that works. It should be make a play that deepens your knowledge about the game in some way, whether it pans out or not. Alright, but circling all the way back, how does this relate to positioning on Medic? Well, just like all of your decisions, your position should also be dynamic and influenced by many factors. Just because you're on Badwater last doesn't mean that this is the end-all be-all of where you should be standing. In fact, if they have a sniper that always goes to the window, then this actually becomes a pretty dangerous position you should avoid. I would say that the main factors that influence your positioning in any given moment are as follows. How many teammates do you have and where are they? How many enemies are there and where are they? Various map-based advantages such as high ground, easy escapes, health packs, NG buildings, your current Uber percent compared to the enemy medic or medics, and of course how much potential healing you can output at that position. The quick and dirty way to tell which team may have an overall advantage is to glance at the dead players up here. Again, you should be looking at your match HUD for a quick update on the current game state at least once every 5 to 10 seconds. But this doesn't always tell the full story because the match HUD will only tell you if you have a player advantage. There can also be health advantages, class advantages, or even ammo advantages that may be just as important. Additionally, not all casual players are equal in terms of skill, to put it lightly. You may have more players with more health and ammo than the enemy team currently has, but if you know that your players aren't exactly the most dependable, you may want to hold off on playing too aggressively, which is why you should always be trying to identify the strongest players or classes on both teams and their playstyles. For example, do they have a spy player, a roaming soldier, a flanking scout? Check the appropriate map locations and angles they could approach you from and change your positioning accordingly. Is your pyro really good at keeping rockets away from you? Follow him around. People are notoriously bad at multitasking, and with the insane amount of things you could be focusing on at any given moment in a match of TF2, it's up to you to determine what's essential and requires active attention versus what you can just ignore. Knowing which enemies are significant threats and which teammates are most likely to protect you helps focus your awareness, thus increasing overall survivability. When you're near your teammates on the front lines, micromanaging your positioning not only lets you survive, but allows you to capitalize on enemy blunders. Generally, you want to keep a healthy distance from your heal target so you don't take unnecessary splash damage from pills or rockets your teammates eat. The metabeam has quite a long range to it, and the disconnect range is even a bit longer than the connect range, so once you're healing, you can safely step back without breaking beam. And even though I just stressed the importance of identifying the team composition, don't peek corners. Use your auditory awareness and your limited vision of bullets, pills, whatever your team is getting hit by to extrapolate what they're fighting. Even if you want to watch as your demo decimates the enemy team with your crit streak charge, peeking that corner will open you up to all sorts of dangers, so just don't do it. And I have to specifically call out engineers here. NG buildings can magnificently increase the relative safety of a given position. Hover near, but not right on top of your engineer buildings unless you actively need health from the dispenser. Buildings are likely to be spammed by explosives, which will then splash you in turn. But against enemies with single target damage, such as scouts, you can duck into a building and use its health as armor to survive. I love having engineers on my team. As a wise man once said, sentries don't miss, but pubbers do. Your sentry is often one of the only teammates you can truly depend on as a medic. Now we have to talk about Ubercharge percents. Another massive factor that informs your positioning practices is your current Ubercharge percentage in in relation to the enemy team medic or medic's percentage. One of the most common ways an otherwise safe position turns into a nightmare near instantaneously is when the enemy team pushes through with some form of Ubercharge, be it stock, crits, whatever. When these situations do arise, it's important that you are able to get away quickly. Your position should usually have an escape route, allowing you to swiftly break line of sight on the front lines and make some distance from the enemy gamers when large pushes occur. You don't want to just die horribly with the rest of your team. But what's even better is avoiding these situations before they even happen, rather than attempting a last-minute escape. Mediguns take a set amount of time to charge, so barring Ubersaw shenanigans, it's actually not that difficult to determine when the enemy medic or medics have their pop ready. Knowing your current Uber advantage or disadvantage informs the level of aggression you play and urge your team with. If you have Uber ready and know that the enemy medic is only 50%, now is the time to be aggressive and make a play happen. He won't be able to counter pop to help deny your effectiveness, and if you manage to kill him during your charge and not die yourself, you will be able to charge Uber again far before he can, so you can push your advantage even further in the future. Which is why you also need to track the enemy Uber and know that if you die to an enemy pop, especially a crit streak, make a mental note that they will have charge again before you do and play conservatively. One of the most common mistakes I see newer medics make in casual is not respecting crits enough and dying to every pop, never getting their Uber themselves. That's how games like this happen. I just crit someone basically as soon as I got charge, and because the enemy medic refused to respect it and position far back, he died every time, and they can never put together an effective push to deal with our snipers and NG to win the game. So how do you effectively track Uber in casual, with so many more factors at play than the more streamlined competitive modes? It's actually not that hard, and I recommend you just use the game timer instead of your own Uber percentage, as I've seen some people discuss. Make sure to play assuming that they are building somewhat optimally, even though medics rarely build as fast as they possibly can. Better safe than sorry in most circumstances. After the enemy medic pops or respawns, and of course you will have to notice this yourself, which doesn't always happen when playing casual, but just know that you should start positioning around them having crits or quick fix again in about 30 to 35 seconds and stock in about 40 to 45 seconds. If they're on Vaccinator, then don't worry about Uber tracking. Just assume they always have a bubble ready. And shout out to the Solemn Vow, which can also give you an exact percentage sometimes if you manage to snag a glimpse of the opposing doctor. Now, once you know they have charge, you need to start positioning around them having said charge. Here it comes, boys. Get ready for it. I'm gonna die to it. I told you. Doing enough crits again here. At least I have a sentry here so they can't super push me. I can't peek to heal that pyro because a crit sticky could fly in, which would be instant death. Yep, there it is. Told ya! I'll have crits again here in a second. Like right now, basically. Watch this, here it comes. No! Okay. Oh my god. Crits is obviously the most dangerous, and as such, you should move quite a distance back or even break line of sight with the choke completely when you know for sure that the enemy medic has a crit streak charged. Oftentimes, their crits pocket will shoot at closer teammates first, but every once in a while, a good demo will charge a sticky prior to being crits and launch it directly at you. These are almost impossible to avoid unless you are already way in the back and can break line of sight in a matter of seconds. The only reason to play aggressive against a medic you know has crit streak is if you have stock Uber or Vaccinator charged and want to push them first or bait him with a reaction time counter pop to turn the fight around. Against the other non-critting metiguns, the pushes that often accompany their charges are still life-threatening, but at least you always have the option of hitting a nice surf out. And remember, if you survive their Uber with 60% yourself, you now have a 60% advantage over the enemy medic. Playing aggressive when your team respawns and you get that charge could lead to a massively advantageous push by your team if the enemy medic isn't also tracking you. At the same time, don't get overzealous with your Uber pushes. For the most part, you always want to make sure you survive post post-Uber, so you can start building again immediately. If that means using your charge's last couple of seconds to back up to safety rather than continue pushing the enemy team, so be it. As long as it isn't overtime or something, your life will likely be worth more in the long run. The only hard part of tracking Uber and casual is that it can get more complicated the more medics the enemy team has, as you now have to follow multiple Ubers instead of just one. However, this also means they will likely be building a tad bit slower, so you can pretty safely add 5 seconds to the expected build times of each of the meta guns. Of course, nobody is perfect, and there will be times when somebody switches to medic and you didn't know that they now have 2 charges, or switch from stock to crits and build faster than you were expecting, and it's also casual, so your spy could just graciously give their medic 50% through saws, completely throwing off your tracking. So the final thing you need to learn when it comes to avoiding death at the hands of enemy Uber pushes is quickly identifying Uber posturing, as I call it. If you ever see their medic with beam attached to a power class, holding W and beelining it through the choke, assume they are going to pop, and you should leave now, not when you actually see the shiny man. The last thing I'll say about playing around enemy charges is that you still do not want to play it too safe. Don't run all the way back to your spawn. Well, unless you're holding Dust Bowl last or something, then you may want to actually get in spawn. But the point is, while they may have Uber, you want to be able to escape if they pop, but you don't want to let them win a fight without even popping because you weren't there to force the pop. Don't lose a fight due to the threat of the enemy medic having Uber rather than forcing them to use and execute the Uber push properly. Once again, you need to be walking that tightrope of safety and output. Speaking of output, I'll spend more time on the nitty-gritty of optimizing it later, but your position should always allow you to do 2 crucial things if you aren't actively trying to escape a dangerous situation. Beam or arrow the players currently fighting, and simultaneously buff players with crit heals on their way back to the front lines before they take chip damage or jump in. In casual, you need to take the initiative when it comes to crit heals, tracking and prioritizing those players yourself because your teammates are unlikely to sit and wait for you to buff them before they enter combat. I'll speak more on this later, but know that crit heals are absolutely busted, and you aren't taking full advantage of what medic is capable of if you aren't actively trying to abuse them. As you use all the information we just discussed and slowly develop your game sense, you'll start accurately predicting the outcome of fights before they even finish happening, letting you dip in and out of combat and lowering your overall deaths significantly. Really honing this skill takes a lot of time, because leave a winning fight too early and you could cost your team a victory, leave a losing fight too late and you won't be able to escape. You'll have to make that tricky risk versus reward assessment yourself. And while I've tried to cover a lot of the major factors involved in that decision-making process in this video, there are so many more niche factors that I just don't have the time to talk about. But always remember that improving your decision-making and game sense is a journey, not a race. Quick side note, I've seen in numerous medic guides that as a medic player, you should always aim for 0 deaths. And even I have personally echoed this statement as a recommendation to beginners. I understand the sentiment and it's a good starting point for newer medics, but I think it can lead people to playing too safe in circumstances that call for a bit more aggression once you have some hours and know-how under your belt. As a medic, you will always be basing your plays on teammates. That's just how the class works, and we all know how inconsistent random TF2 players are. Dude missed the sentry. He missed it 4 times! Thank God, dude. What the hell am I watching? Still, there are plenty of circumstances where it is worth it to put some faith in your fellow teammates and go for a high reward Uber that will win the point or game if it works, or result in your death if you or your team beefs. Risk is necessary if you want the highest reward. The key is finding that balance and learning what risks are actually worth it. So to summarize the aspects of solid positioning, stay near your teammates to keep your healing and Uber building as high as possible, micromanage your position to avoid spam and sniper sight lines, keep your awareness high and have good crosshair placement to avoid flankers and bombs as much as possible, and track the enemy medic's Uber percentage to avoid death during a push. The keen-eyed among you might notice that throughout this video so far, I have rarely mentioned relying on a teammate to protect you. That's because I honestly think that if you do end up in a position where you need a teammate to bail you out, you have already made a mistake on medic. Never place your life in the hands of a teammate unless you truly believe it is worth the risk for a big play. That's not to say you shouldn't take advantage of good teammates and abuse their DM skills to play in position more aggressively when you can. Again, exploit the current situation to its fullest. However, it's a common theme for medic players in particular to blame teammates for deaths or losses. I'll do it often enough myself when a teammate beefs hard. Push them off, push them off. No, not into me! Off! No, not into me! But in the back of my mind, I know that I could have positioned differently or played better and lived regardless of how that teammate played themselves. It's true, with a god-awful team against better players, you are probably going to die more, and you don't have much hope of winning the game overall. But I'll let you know, if you simply switch off medic to something else or write off the game and stop trying, you're doing yourself a disservice. I see it all the time, even from more serious medic players. They just don't understand how to play the class on a losing team. Playing medic when you're rolling is easy, but keeping those heals and Ubers going when it seems like half your players just launched the game for the first time will push your game sense to the absolute limit. I challenge you to forget about winning when those games occur. It'll only frustrate you, but instead use them as a test of your current positional knowledge, where you just try to die as little as possible while still building a few Ubers. Trust me, you'll learn more about what you need to improve in your playstyle in one lost game doing that than in 10 easy victories. I want to quickly break down a crit screen clip that displays a lot of split-second decisions, high awareness, and assumptions based on my current level of game sense. Here we're holding Barn Blitz first with about 30 seconds left when I notice that one of their medics Ubers and pushes into the barn right as I get my charge. They do kill a few of my teammates but get Girardi'd and taken down right at the end of the Uber. That medic won't have enough time to get another charge by the end of the game, and we seem to still be holding pretty strong. Once I notice this, I immediately push up right with my soldier and pop my charge. However, I'm not looking to kill a bunch of blue players here. I'm looking for one kill here. Their other medic. From my current perspective on this game, I make the assumption that the only way blue is going to be able to push through and capture the point is if their second medic gets his Uber off and they capitalize on it. So I don't care about killing any other blue players with this crits. They'll respawn in time for the push anyways. As I pop, I see the sniper in the back and immediately break line of sight as the scout pushes in. Scout just runs away for some reason as my soldier misses his first rocket and I get jumped by a blue soldier. Notice that I don't even turn to look at him. I'm still looking for any chance that we manage to kill the other medic, as me dying for that trade would be worth it. But I still know that in about half a second, I'm going to eat a rocket. And if my friendly soldier doesn't manage to kill this guy, I'm going to eat another after that and die. Seeing no indication that the enemy medic is down there in choke and this crits will be successful in the way I wanted to, I quickly decide to surf out on the blue soldier's first rocket rather than try to continue the crits push. Very quickly, I decided that my intended play was going to fail, so I took the only out I saw before ending up too deep, and now I can heal up and buff my players on cart in preparation for their pub push. If I had died there without killing the blue medic, it would only further increase the chance that blue's push would be successful. Now, if I had stayed in, was it possible my soldier hit a nutty rocket right at the end of the crits and it ended up being fat? Yes, but my game sense told me the chance of that happening was far too low and the risk far too great with an enemy soldier already in my face. So I took the much lower risk play that I could essentially guarantee would work. All this awareness, game state tracking, and fight appraisal takes experience, but hopefully I've given you a head start. Of course, you will make mistakes and die. Everyone does. So when your wits fail you and you find yourself in a do or die situation, you're gonna wanna know these next niche strategies and mechanics you can use to outplay your opponents and still make it out of a dangerous position. The first is damage surfing and then air strafing. This is very important in general and can really save your ass. Medic gets pushed pretty far by a lot of damage sources. I'm not just talking rockets and stickies. Honestly, I'm not that great at damage surfing myself, but I've been getting better and I've hit a few decent surfs as of late. You just want to time your taking damage with a crouch jump and an air strafe to a better position. It takes a little practice, but knowing the fire rate of their weapon helps a ton with timing your jump properly. Okay, get me in there. Somebody peek and shoot a rocket right down main. Do it. You know you want to. Do it! Whoa! Yeah! Nice jump, dude. I didn't even make it up. Now I did.
About you.
Oh my god! I dropped him! Next, in general, always favor running instead of fighting. Or better yet, shoot some syringes or crossbows at your assailant as you try to escape. Avoid fights you aren't confident, and I mean incredibly confident that you could win. Trust me, the 25% from getting that Ubercharge hit off isn't worth the risk 9 times out of 10. You do move 10% slower when backpedaling, but you can AD strafe while backpedaling to counteract it somewhat and move slightly more unpredictably. And remember that all metiguns now allow the medic to match the move movement speed of whoever he's healing, so you can always use scouts or high head count demo knights for their move speed boost and book it the other direction. Mechanically speaking, know what every other class does, what their options are, and where they are likely to attack from. Here are a few class specific tips that can help you avoid unfortunate situations. Scout is incredibly dangerous and can always catch up to you. Scouts often look to surprise players by flanking. With his speed, high damage, and double jumps, it's not really feasible to win a 1v1 against a good scout as a medic. The best bet isn't to fight at all, but move unpredictably and try to buy time for your team to kill him. Strafing off a scattergun shot is an option to buy a little bit of space, but doesn't always come up because a scout is like to shoot down on you from above, and unless you strafe around a corner into friendlies or a sentry nest, the scout is just going to continue chasing. For the most part, if you get caught out alone by a good scout, just say goodnight. Staying near sentries when possible is one of the best scout deterrents though. For soldiers, avoid splash and chokes by positioning a bit away from the front lines and your teammates. There are a lot of players with soldier brain out there who think they are good because they can bomb free-to-plays and casual. They will just jump at you over and over. However, this makes them extremely easy to deal with as long as you're paying attention and have good crosshair placement. An airshot crossbow will completely destroy their momentum, or just surf a rocket and they die and look like a fool. Work it, twerk it, and jerk it, dude. Do that 7 days a week, you're gonna have something special. About to get bombed, by the way.
You should pray.
Check it out, check this shit out. There he is. There he is.
You're having chocolate, goddammit.
Thank you. Soldier brain. If they do catch you off guard, you will most likely die or need a panic pop, so be on alert when there are jumping soldiers around. Again, staying near sentries will often prevent these bombs. Pyro is pretty simple. Don't get flanked, stay out of the flamethrower range, and you'll be good for the most part. Just watch out for jetpack heroes, and always be wary when your soldiers or demos are fighting a pyro near you. The last thing you want is to catch a reflect. Do not let pyros easily chip you down with flare spam. If you don't have another medic to heal you up, it's putting you in a perpetually weaker state or making you waste time by running around to health packs. Also know that many pyros try to get fancy with their kills and will oftentimes beef because of it. Be ready to strafe an air blast or dodge a flare even if the pyro could easily kill you just by WM1ing. And watch out for the third degree. Switch to crossbow on sight. Against demos, watch for their sticky traps, and again, stay away from the spam. Don't let your teammates kill you with splash by eating directs. Never be close enough to a demo where he can spam stickies at you without needing to charge them up a little first. Stickies and rollers are also very easy to damage surf away with. Demos sometimes try to bomb, but it's much rarer than soldiers unless they're running the sticky jumper. It should be pretty tough for a heavy to kill you if you are positioning correctly, as he should never really be able to get close enough. If a heavy does surprise you, it's very easy to surf away on his bullets if you have enough HP, given he's not too close, and just mows you down. Jump, let go of W, and use A and D to get away quickly. Bunny hopping a few times also does wonders when strafing heavy bullets. Listen for sentries when playing against Engies, and don't run around corners before a teammate does. Sentries can be surfed very similar to heavies, even minis. Engineers are usually the least likely to class to get into a tussle with besides other medics, and you're faster than them, so you can always just back away. Track the opposing medic's Uber to know when the enemy team is likely to push. Good players will focus you during an Uber or crits push to deny your build. Fall back in preparation of the pop so you aren't surprised, and counter pop if necessary or applicable. Medic is actually the only class you can easily win against in a true 1v1 if you're more skilled than them. So he is also the only class you don't have to fear as long as he doesn't have health. Know the common sniper sight lines and stay out of them. Assume that if you enter a sight line that a sniper is covering, you will be headshot, so do not take the risk unless absolutely necessary. When playing with actual comms or friends, have your teammates tell you the sniper's position so you don't have to play so scared. If you really have no choice, know the rhythm of the sniper's rifle and move unpredictably when he's about to quickscope. Don't jump. It actually makes your movement more predictable against snipers. Mediguns stay attached to your heal target regardless of where you're looking, so get in the habit of checking your back every 5 seconds or so while the enemy spy is active. Just like a scout, know the probable flank routes. Listen for decloak sounds. For the most part, do not chase a spy or try to melee fight them. Backstabs are whack, and generally it's not worth the risk of something weird happening or getting trick stabbed. Crossbow is excellent for spy checking. You will get a hit sound on a disguised spy. Medic autocall can also help you identify spies very easily in certain circumstances. When you do need to get your hands a little dirty and fight an opposing class, the overall strategy doesn't change too much. If you happen to be using a flavor of syringe gun, turn them into a pincushion while strafing around just outside of melee range and dodging the best you can. But more than likely, you'll be using the Crusaders. I like to swap between the Crusaders and melee if the enemy is too close. The crossbow reloads on stow, so you don't actually miss out on primary DPS by switching to melee, and it can let you possibly increase your damage overall if your swing actually connects. But even if you don't land a hit with your saw, the enemy seeing a medic with his melee out may force them back a bit, making them more predictable for your crossbow shot and increasing its damage slightly as well. Finally, to close this out, if there are 2 or more medics on the same team, overheal each other. I actually get a little annoyed when medics think only power classes need heals. 2 medics together make each other better. Killing a juiced up 225 health medic is significantly more challenging for the enemy team. It means no quickscope kills, 3 rockets or pills instead of 2, 3 scattergun shots minimum. Even a crit melee might not do the trick if there's no follow-up. Please, medics, spread the love. And all in all, the best way to improve your survivability on medic is to just play with a good mindset focused on improving. If you find yourself dying or dropping too often, the first step to fixing it is figuring out why it's happening. After every death, think about how it could have been avoided while respawning. Do that while applying the lessons taught in this video, and you'll find yourself making it out of situations you never thought possible.
God, this is first. Hey, yo, Squirrely, you trying to,
Oh my god.
trying to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Here
nice
you
and
go.
spicy.
3.
Come on. Okay.
Hey, yo, ready? 3, 2, do it. Do it.
Oh my god! I think
It's a nightmare.
No.
I go launch,
What
sir.
a nightmare.
No way.
Is that solar?
We go.
Wow.
This is
Go.
Wait, you're just running? Okay, we're just
Run,
running.
run.
I can get you.
You don't have to use.
Jesus.
Alright, good.
Where are you? I'm here.
I'm here. I'm right here!
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Oh!
That's a lot of them dead. Push the door.
Did we just lose?
It was a bait, and you know it.
Nice job.
We're not lose.
I went deep.
All right.
Respect me.
I'm reading Danny.
Goodbye.
Wow! I hear the death.
Oh,
Can we have?
Oh my god.
We did! You did it!
Alright.
We've done it! We're
Oh my
saved!
God.
We got the team!
Hey, listen, I